partner at LaRousse Consulting. We are focused on career and professional development and project management support in general. Before I get on with the rest of the discussion, I'd like to check that we are all okay, keeping safe and making the most of this very unusual time, our newest normal. With me in the studio today, actually in his private studio, it's a very good friend of mine, a mentor, a senior colleague, someone I respect so much, someone who is very, very passionate about impacting the lives of young people, helping them to become the best versions of themselves and becoming responsible citizens of the world, as it were. He is Patrick Okigbo III. Patrick is a principal partner at Next Year Advisory, a leading public policy advisory firm and think tank with a focus on governance and public sector reform. So Patrick has been working with government agencies, non-government agencies, development partners to help address the very critical and difficult development challenges. Patrick is an avid reader. He reads a lot. He writes a lot. So if you call him a bookaholic or a readaholic, you would not be far from the truth. Thank you so much, Patrick, for joining us today.
Thank you, Ifi.
Yes, and we have a guest contributor. Dozie Okpalaobieri is another avid reader. He's doing a lot with this passion of reading. So he will join us for 3 to 5 minutes to share some insights on what he's been doing with his passion for reading. Okay, so we're going to get on with it, Patrick. I have a number of questions for you. Hopefully, we'll see how we get on with those, and I'll also try and monitor the chats and see what our audience, what the audience is saying. Today is all about that book. So when we say that, which book are we talking about, Patrick?
Well, I mean, I don't know. You came up with the title, so I don't know which book you're talking about. But I think for, the way I see it is, what's that book that you should read, right? And I think it's different for different people. Some people read fiction to escape or to travel to different experiences or to learn new things. Some others read non-fiction. Most people do a combination of both. But I think it's for everyone to figure out what their core interest is and to seek out that core interest. Whatever it is that you are interested in, I can bet you that a dozen or more people have already, spent a lifetime thinking about those issues and writing them up. So for the people who are listening, and I'm sure that there are different interests online, the point is, what is that core interest you have that you want to know a little bit more about, or you want to expand on your knowledge in? That is what I'll call that book. And I'm sure that there's a library full of books on that particular subject.
Thank you so much, Patrick. Yes, I know I picked the topic and I put you on the spot. So that book is the book that you've been trying to read for ages, including those ones that are collecting dust on your shelves, the one you put beside your pillow and you open one page and you don't get to read it. Hopefully at the end of the session today, we would be able to go back and read those books and share our experiences doing that. Patrick, I recall a conversation we had some weeks ago. I remember you saying that you wanted to escape to some island and go sit down there and read for one whole week, read and write. And it got me thinking, I know you're a very busy person. Your schedule is absolutely crazy, in my opinion. And yet you're there trying to find a space to go out there and just focus on your reading. So what's the magic? What does reading do to you? How has that helped you in your career today?
It's interesting. It's an interesting question. And I'm sure, as you guess, I tried to look up what other people have said, reasons why we should read. And I just typed on Google, why should we read or something like that. And a whole host of, websites came up. 25 reasons why you should read, 7 reasons why you should read that good book. So I'm sure anyone who does a quick search can find reasons why they should read. But I found some to be quite interesting. Apparently there's some Yale study that was done on people aged over 50, I think. And it shows that anyone who reads for about 30 minutes every day most people who read for 30 minutes every day live for 23 months longer on average than folks who don't read. So if there was a big pitch for why you should read more, I think it would be for you to live longer, I guess. But there are other reasons, why I find reading to be a very pleasurable experience. For me, it's that search for the cause of things, So the motto for the London School of Economics, is to find the cause of things, yeah? And it resonates a lot with me. I'm quite fascinated by why things are the way they are, how could they be different, and I find that there's this perpetual search for answers. I find a lot interesting. But I also have my moments of escapism, where I just want to disappear into, call it a fantasy world. And you can pick a great book of fiction by whomever, you find to be interesting. In fact, last night, I was having a chat with my wife and, we're talking about Stephen King, that at whatever age he is right now, he's still writing, and he just released a new book a few weeks ago. And wouldn't it be fascinating to read Stephen King? Yeah, he writes a lot of horror, but it's amazing how his mind works, right? Or whatever else. So for me, it's that quest to know. It is a desire to escape. It is a bit to figure out answers. It's to figure out answers to maybe things I'm struggling with or things that could help me in the work I do. So there's a myriad of reasons why one would want to read. But I find it a very pleasurable experience.
Oh, fantastic. It's an escape, the quest to know, and of course to find answers to questions that you have and hopefully solve the problems that needs to be solved. And then if we look at factors that have influenced your reading habit. So is this something about your upbringing, your background? What are those factors? And then we can also talk about why we have a poor culture in Nigeria.
Yeah, I think I must go back to the background and I must give credit to my mom, right? So my mother was a teacher, all her life. She started from teaching primary school and later she retired as a university lecturer. And I remember growing up, one of the things that she always insisted on was that we all read, right? So I was a bit of a rambunctious, little kid, and I found reading not to be the most pleasurable thing. My sisters, on the other hand, especially my elder sister, because of her nature, she could escape for hours and bury herself in a book, and she enjoyed that a great deal. But it was a matter of a constant issue in the family that you must read. During the holidays as well, when it was a bit difficult for my mom to keep us on the straight and narrow, she created little competitions, so would pick out a book to read, and by the weekend, you would have finished reading it and you would write an essay, on the book, yeah? And the person who got the most interesting essay won a prize, right? And the person who made the least mistakes or errors in English, got a prize. So she created different categories, which we all struggled to win, but I think it was smart on her part because she found a way for everybody to win something, So if you didn't win the most interesting essay, you won something, yeah? And that competition kept us going, and with time, you develop that habit and it becomes part of you. And once you get into it, you see it's a pleasurable experience and then it becomes part of your life, I guess. So I have to come back to, it's the background. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think our background is also similar because I grew up in an academic family and my father insisted that we would register at the Children's Center Library. We would read, we would come up with new words, we would show him how we can use those words, new sentences, and all of those. My father insisted, but when I look at parenting today, so what are people who don't come from backgrounds, who don't have mothers or fathers as teachers? Is there any hope for these human beings, especially the way the parenting has become in this day and age?
Yeah, why not? I mean, I think it's once you figure out that there is value to be derived from this, right? It then forces you, it's not like force you, but once you realize that there's value, then you realize that it's something worth doing, right? So there's a bit of a challenge with the society we live in where knowledge does not always translate to opportunity, right? And knowledge, it's not the most knowledgeable person that gets into that position. It's not the most knowledgeable person, who gets ahead in life in the way we've defined success in Nigeria, right? So you could have a situation where parents may not draw that line, between getting their kids to love reading and ultimate success. Yeah, that could be that challenge. Well, I'd like to debunk that. I'd like to say that the society we live in is an anomaly. This is not how human beings exist, right? So we shouldn't base our thinking on what we see. Yeah. Now, some of the things we see might also not reflect how the society works. So I still see that kids who come out of the university and can prove that they have the mettle, tend to get those few opportunities that the Nigerian economy still creates. So an example, I run a consulting firm, so all we trade in is knowledge. Yeah. So I'm looking for people who, one, love reading, love thinking, and can communicate. Yeah. You could have made a good degree in school, but when I engage you in a conversation during the recruitment process, and I find that you're not inquisitive, yeah?
Yeah.
And there's some other person who's looking for that job, but I can see that they're inquisitive. And there are many ways to figure out if someone is inquisitive or not. It is more than likely the second candidate will get the job, right? So yes, Nigeria does not reward it if you look at it in that sense. Yes, the job opportunities might not exist, and the few that exist, the senators and the governors, will take them and give to their people. But there are still some opportunities that come out in the private sector, and because those opportunities are keenly contested for, you need to differentiate yourself. And it must go beyond just what you studied in school, because really, that university degree you have does not tell me that you know anything. It just tells me that you've spent 4 years in a university and that you're now ready to learn. Yeah, I'm looking to see what else about you? What is it that fascinates you? What is it that makes you different? And it's in the conversations, that if you've read those great books and in talking to you, you can reference, or in trying to prove a point, reference some author or talk about something or take me to worlds I've not been in. Now I'm fascinated. Yeah. Now I spend more time with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Patrick, for that point, because that brings me to your Accenture story. I would like you to share your Accenture interview story, because I know we have young people here, young graduates. I think it's an interesting for them to know.
Okay, so that's an interesting story I shared with you when we were getting ready for this program. So I graduated from University of Nigeria in Nsukka in 1996, right? I had a degree in agriculture. And most of the kids these days might think that Nigeria all of a sudden stopped producing jobs, right? But the economy has been dying for a long time. By 96, it was difficult to get jobs. Anyway, it was a bit different because back then you could still pick up Guardian on Thursday and see job adverts in the Guardian. Today you can't. But by the time I came out of school, I knew that I needed to differentiate myself. Yeah, so I'd been reading in school, but again, we were poor students. We didn't have access. There was no internet, so we didn't have access to a lot of books. If one Reader's Digest or Time magazine came into school, we all queued up to, get to read it. And then I graduated, came to Lagos, met a young man who was a medical doctor, but I found him to be one of the most intelligent persons I've ever met. Yeah. And I noticed that every time I met with him, he always had two things in his hand. Yeah. One was a book, and the second was a copy of The Economist magazine. I've never seen The Economist magazine at this point, right? So I started engaging with him to say, what is this stuff you read? And he said, well, all world leaders read The Economist. And I'm like, okay, if all world leaders read The Economist, then I have to read The Economist. But remember, I'm a poor graduate. I couldn't afford to buy The Economist. So what did I do? I figured out that if you go to a Cheleba roundabout, you've got all these guys that sell old magazines. And I found some guy, who somehow had access to the magazines. And, so I could buy them for next to nothing because really nobody ever bought The Economist from him. They bought Time magazine and a few other things. So I started reading it. I was lucky. I got a job with Diamond Bank. but I really wanted to be in consulting. So, but by the time I got a job with Diamond Bank, I could now afford to pay a subscription for The Economist, because by this time I'd started understanding what the magazine spoke about and so on and so forth. I ultimately got a chance to interview with Anderson Consulting at the time, now Accenture. And in my last interview, it was with the managing partner, Dr. Suleiman. And I walked into his office. You know, he was doing a lot of stuff, but still asking me interview questions. I got through the, tell me about yourself and so on. And the next question out of his mouth was, what magazine do you subscribe to? Now, remember, this is a job for fresh graduates, right? And Dr. is asking me what magazine I subscribe to. So I said to him, I subscribe to The Economist. And he asked me, so what was on the cover of this week's Economist? And I said to him, oh, it's about Bill Clinton, about Bill Gates. And he sat up and looked at me. And then I realized I made a mistake. It was actually about Bill Clinton. So I corrected myself, gave him the title of that week's magazine, and we forgot everything about the interview and started discussing it. Now, the subject of that particular week's edition, I think it was titled Slick Willie. It was when Bill Clinton had his little shindig with Monica Lewinsky. So we spent the rest of the interview talking about Bill Clinton, Monica Lewinsky, and the US legal system. Now, remember, this is a fresh graduate from University of Nigeria, Nsukka. And the question is about Bill Clinton, Monica Lewinsky, and the US judicial system. If I hadn't been reading, there is no way I would have been able to, take care of those questions. But because I had, I could engage with him, partner, Arthur Anderson Consulting combined. We had something to connect on. And that's something that reading does for you. Reading allows you to connect with people, and you connect at a level where it drops all of their whatever hang-ups they might have about you. They start relating with you almost like equals, because now it's an idea that you're discussing. And ideas, anybody can have an idea. So that's another advantage that reading does for you. Sorry, that took too long.
No, but it's very important, because you and I, we go out there and we run these career workshops for different universities, and the issue is always about we don't have any experience, we don't have anything to bring to the table. And the point is that everyone has something to bring to the table. And just like you said, back in the days, graduate of UNN, and you're reading about the US, you're reading about every other, the UK, the Europe, every other thing happening outside your own walls that you are used to. And of course, with technology, we now have access to a lot more information. And I think it's important that we emphasize, especially to our young graduates, that we should read more. I know we spend a lot of time on the internet. Let's make it worth our while. So what if you can boldly say that I haven't been in an office, so I don't have office experience per se. But through reading, you can actually say that you have some experience, because you can discuss intelligently, and there's always something for you to bring to the table. So that's an important point. I don't think you took too long. It's very important you emphasized on that. Okay, so when and it's interesting you talked about this. It was Bill Clinton at that point, because I remember putting up this poster and people were saying, why are you using Bill Gates? Why are you using Obama? Why are you using Mandela? I think I had a discussion with someone about Oprah. We talked about Elon Musk, and they're like, you're using people who are a different world. I mean, talk about us here. And I want to hear your view on that. Do they have two heads? Why can we not start comparing ourselves and getting inspired by what they do and how they are reading? So I'd like to hear your views.
So I actually really liked the poster you put out for this program. It picked the second richest man in the world, but he still finds time to read 50 books a year, right? I thought that was a good way to excite young people. Yeah, I'm hoping it excites them, that they make the mistake of thinking maybe he became the second richest man in the world because he reads 50 books a year, so they go ahead and read 50 books a year. That would be fantastic, right? Whilst we can't claim that is why, there's no one-for-one correlation, that once you read 50 books a year, you're going to become the richest man in the world. I wish it was, but it's not. But what you get from the books would definitely make you more successful, right? So there may be 2 ways I want to attempt to address the question you raised. It's not only, foreigners who read these books, right? So as a young professional, I decided I wanted to have mentors, right? Now, I got this idea from reading books. I got the idea from, reading. I can't even remember who I read it from, but if you want to be successful, you look at people who've gone down this path before you, engage them as mentors, and they can advise, etc. So I picked out a number of people who I'd never met, but I found fascinating. And I wrote letters to them. Now, this was the days when you wrote letters and not emails.
Yeah.
So I wrote letters to them and asked them that I wanted them to be my mentor, right? And one of them responded, and that's Professor Patton, right? And he would set out time. I think we met once every month. Yeah. So I'll meet him at the Lagos Business School. He'll take me downstairs to their cafeteria for lunch, and we'll have a conversation, right? And there were a few things I found fascinating about Patton. Back then, he always wrote. It was like he always had some essay in the newspapers every week. And I just couldn't figure out how he juggled his very busy schedule with such an active writing life. And I asked him directly, I said, how do you manage this? First of all, how did you get to write so beautifully? And then how do you manage such a busy schedule? And he said to me, Patrick, whatever happens in a day, I try to set out some time to read and to write. And if I remember correctly, he said he spends about 2 hours every day, both reading and writing, but he must write every day. And I said to myself, okay, this is interesting. I'm going to copy that. So I created a challenge for myself that I'd write something every day, right? I wasn't a fantastic writer, but at least I would write something. I'll sneak it to a few people who will be lenient in their criticism. And, over time, it's like going to the gym, right? You go to the gym, you exercise the muscles, and then, you build the biceps. The same thing with reading. I found that I also complained back then that I never had the time, to read. And he said to me, sit down and write out how you spend every hour of your life, right? And you now see the gaps where you're basically wasting time, and you can convert that to, more creative use. And I did that, and I found that the hours, when I'm going to work, in a bus or in a taxi or whatever it was back then, I had all this time that I could spend reading. Then, in between, the time to sit and gist with people and talk about, Big Brother Nigeria and so on and so forth, you could spend reading. When you sit down and write down how you spent your time, you realize how much time you've wasted. That if you really applied your time, you could finish a book in 2 days. Yesterday, I just downloaded a book that I'm reading now. It's from some young Chinese lady, Yuan Ang. It's a great book on China's Gilded Age. And because I read it on a Kindle, I checked how many hours. And it said it's estimated, the book is going to take you about 11 hours, 30 minutes, to read. Mm. So if I can save 2 hours every day, I should be done reading this book before this time next week, right? And every young person has more time than that. Yeah, time spent watching movies. I'm not saying that movies are not great. Yeah, time spent, talking about Davido and who's the new dance step or whatever. Those are great. You need those, but there are ideas. There are ideas that are locked up in books that you must pick up that book to find that idea. And it could be that idea that will trigger another idea, for you to either get that job that you're looking for or create something. Yeah, I'll stop there.
Okay, thank you so much. And, based on your experience so far, because I know you wanted to come to your the book club you run in the office. Okay, maybe we should just talk about it now. What inspired you to start the book club in your office?
Okay, so we've got a...
And how has that experience been?
You have to ask the young people. So
I think for you, are you seeing the results you want to see? So
let me start by saying that we have, in the firm I run, we have a monthly book club, right? So I'm surrounded by a lot of young people who, some of them haven't quite built up, the culture, the habits for reading. And I thought it would be good to set up a book club where we all pick a book we want to read. We all read the book, and then we meet. I think it's the last Thursday of every month to discuss the book. Now, when we started, there was a lot of pushback. A lot of but unfortunately, I knew that it's like I knew it was a good medicine for them to take. So I insisted, and we found a way to get the books to them, and we made it such that none of them really knew if they were going to be the person to lead the discussion. Yeah. So you have to find a way to make them read the book. So we'll all pick the book. Someone suggests a book, we vote on it, or people suggest books. We all vote. The book that gets the highest number of votes is selected. Everyone gets a copy of the book, and we start reading. Now, you don't know if you're the one who's going to present on the last Thursday. So if you don't read, you're going to have egg on your face. Yeah. So, and on the Monday or the Tuesday of that week, there's a lucky dip. Yeah. And if your name is picked, then you're going to put together a presentation to lead the conversation. Right. And I think that kind of aligned the incentives, and they started reading grudgingly. But what I found is that in the 2 or so years that we've run this, there's now a lot of excitement. And where do I draw that from? I see that in the suggestions or in the recommendations of books. So more of them are now recommending books that we vote on. I see it in the level of participation during the discussions, because I will call you out to make a contribution. Yeah, I'm in almost all of the book club discussions, and I'll call everybody individually. And it's better for you, if you've not read the book, to make your contributions, earlier on in the day, because later in the day we're not asking, more difficult questions, But I find that these days, that rush to make early contributions, folks have gotten over it. And it gets quite heated, such that even after we log out, we finish the conversation, a number of troublesome people amongst them stay back and continue the debate. It gives me a lot of pleasure, to see that we're building that reading culture. And you see it in in the way they think about stuff now, the depth of the reasoning, they go 2, 3, 4 layers deep in thinking about an issue. And that's what you get when you read different authors, you read different books. It opens your mind in the way you think about issues.
Yeah. Absolutely. I know it takes a lot of courage to do that, because I know I've listened to a couple of people who say, I'd like to run a book club. I'd like to do this for my people. I like to do it in the school. And it's almost like finding the courage to do it and sustain it is always the issue. But it is doable. And I think all the listeners, we know that this is doable. We can be intentional about helping our people, especially young people around us, to inculcate this habit, imbibe it, and use it to solve the problems in the office space. And then what would you say, when we talk about the reading culture in Nigeria, I say that we have a poor reading culture because I've interacted a lot with students. Do you agree that we have a poor reading culture? What are the factors for this, if you agree or disagree?
I don't know if we have, and this is an ongoing debate I have. Yeah. I don't know if we have a poor reading culture. Yeah. So in one period when I was a bit crazy, I thought I would start a bookstore in Abuja, because a city can't be a city if it doesn't have a bookstore. So when I was thinking about it, I started engaging with people who sell books, to figure out what's the level of sales. And everywhere I see the folks at the airports, the folks at Glendora in Lagos, booksellers here in Abuja, and so on and so forth. And what I find is that Nigerians actually read, right? Now, what they read might be different. And this is just from a very back of an envelope kind of research. Most people read self-help books, so the folks that run bookstores, they sell a lot of the self-help, 7 ways to become a millionaire, 7 ways to, become Bill Gates, those types of books. They also sell a lot of religious books, so books by the different pastors and so on and so forth. So I wouldn't say that we don't have a reading culture. Now, I pulled up some data as well. I think about 40% of Americans have not read any book this year, in the year when the research was done. So that
Yeah.
means, like 2 out of 5 Americans, don't even read. So if you look at the statistics for Nigeria, maybe ours might be a bit worse because we're challenged by a few other things that distract us.
Okay.
But I don't think it's as bad as we make it out to be, right? There are still bookstores in Nigeria that are fairly successful, right? So that says that there might be a demand. Now, what I think the problem is sometimes people want to read, but they don't know where to start, right? They don't know where to start. They also don't know where to get the books. And I think those are the 2 big issues, right? But there are key answers to this challenge. I think the first place to start is to figure out what is it that you're interested in reading. What is it that you want to read? Yeah. Is it fiction? Is it non-fiction? Do you want to read to improve your career or whatever? If you go to a myriad of websites, you get recommendations. Yeah. The New York Times, for as long as, God knows how long, has been publishing a New York bestseller list, right? For fiction and non-fiction, biographies, etc. That's a good place to start. Amazon, has a long list of must-read books. Log on there, get a list of the books and figure it out. Goodreads.com has a number of lists that you can start with. And the brilliant thing about this is that you find a topic, you can then spend some time doing some research, Google search on the topic and see if it's something that you're interested in. The next thing is, how do I get the books, right? Because I'm sure some people who are listening are thinking, I'm a poor student or graduate, I can't even, fund feed. And you're saying spend $20, buying a book or whatever. There are also many websites that you can go to and you download electronic copies of books. Now, I don't know how they've figured it out. I don't know how they've worked it out, but these websites are there. One that I tend to recommend to my younger friends is pdfdrive.com. Yeah. And there are over 8 million books, on this site that you can download for free. Interestingly, earlier this afternoon, I was talking with a friend of mine, Nana Ude, and, he told me how he bought this set of books for, X amount of money that runs into the thousands. I said to him, oh, great. Now, I went to pdfdrive.com and I downloaded all of those books and I sent him a screenshot of my Kindle and said to him, I just downloaded all of those books for free. Yeah? So what's the point I'm trying to make? If you don't read, it's because you don't want to read. Yeah? You live in a world where you have access, great access, more access than we ever had growing up, right? Your sites, almost all of Harvard and Stanford and MIT course content is online for free. I mean, that needs a bit of restating.
Yes.
What people pay $200,000 to get is online for free. Now, all you have to do to get it is to pay for data. You're already using the data. You're already using it, but the problem is that you're spending it watching Big Brother Nigeria. You're spending it on Facebook, picking a fight with everybody, talking about Buhari and Atiku and blah, blah, blah. Spend some of that data in improving yourself because the stuff is already out there. So I've talked about the 2 main issues, which is where to get the stuff. Now the ball is back in their court.
In everyone's court. Absolutely. And I think, like you rightly said, technology is making things easier for us. So we actually have the books. Why are we not reading them? And I think that's the cocoa. Even with data, we all have data. Everyone does WhatsApp, we do Facebook, we do Instagram, we do all sorts of social media. Why are we not reading it? And it brings us to my next point. And I'd probably like Dozie to say something on this. Growing up, if you want to visit someone, if it's someone's birthday, people will buy books and give, in addition to a box of chocolate or a piece of toy. But we find that these days, we are not really encouraging people to read. I know, let's talk about for the younger kids. Why are we not giving them books? Why are we not sending vouchers to parents so that the children can utilize the technology and read for free as well? So there's a disconnect somewhere. And I would like Dozie to say something about that. Yusuf, can you please just get Dozie Okpalaobieri on camera, please? Let me find him. Okay, I think while we wait for Yusuf to, okay, so Dozie is here. Hi, Dozie.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us.
Hi.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
I see you've grown a beard as well.
It's the COVID beard. I was there at work one of these early. We started this process in March, and we thought by April, May we'll be back in the office, and all of a sudden we're still grinding. And one of my colleagues had a beard growing, and they thought maybe it was the power team at the bank that was trying to grow a beard. So I decided to join the challenge. I know at some point I'm going to shave it off because this is not me. But I heard your question, and I have to say that as Patrick was talking, I was nodding like a wall gecko because he literally hit the nail on. I mean, a lot of the points I would make in a similar kind of situation, he has made a number of them. I think that the question about it's somebody's birthday, I'm one of those guilty persons that I would buy a book or books for someone as a present. And I think when we were growing up, my dad would buy books, he would write his name, he would sign it, write the date, and write the city. So I have a tendency, if you come to my library, I have books inscribed with Boston, Ghana, Accra, where I've lived before, Abuja, and then I inscribe them when I've been to Patrick's house, and trust me, I've raided his bookshelf a couple of times. But the thing about borrowing books from people who love books, you have to make sure you keep them in the good condition and return them back so that somebody else has the opportunity to borrow them. But I mean, like I said, I echo a lot of what Patrick has said. I mean, it's very important to read. One of the other things I have found is that reading increases your speed of comprehension. And this comes up in exams. I've had exam situations where people say, oh, I didn't finish. And I can't figure out why they didn't finish. But you realize that people are reading and finding it hard to grasp. They will grasp it, but it will take them longer. Whereas somebody who is used to seeing those words, who's used to seeing, encountering those words very often, would read, understand, and move on to the next question, especially those very timed, I went to law school here in Abuja, very timed, narrow amount of time you have to answer questions. I also, in fact, I think what Patrick does with his office book club, when I first came to Abuja newly, Patrick had a policy book club. I don't know why it got abandoned. There was a phase 1 of that book club, there was a phase 2, and then after that, I suppose the next year book club took over.
Times.
What's that?
You did it 5 times.
Aha. So with my staff, I do exactly the same thing. When people come to me and they're looking for work, either they want to work with me directly or they want me to help them find a job. By the time I ask you about yourself, what are you interested in? They can't leave my presence without me asking, so what books have you read lately? And trust me, the answer to me is not the Bible or the Quran or the newspaper, because anybody can pick that up and whatnot. The question, those are good books to read. But what else have you read? And especially, Patrick talked about, he studied agric, but he's reading The Economist as, something in quotes, a different field. But you need to explore beyond your, for lack of a better word, your current world. So that reading outside of your expertise or outside of, I've had instances in interviews too, where a question is asked, I answer it, and there's that, how did you know that? And I'm sure I read it in a book somewhere. And the last point, so that I don't monopolize, when I was in SS3, our English teacher came into class and said, oh, I want you guys, dump the normal lecture for the day, you guys will write an essay. I wrote an essay. I still remember she gave me 29/50. So when I went to her afterwards, I said, ma, what did I? She said, oh, you copied this somewhere. When I reminded her that we wrote the essay in class, you could see the doubt started to creep in. She couldn't, now that whole idea of penalizing me for copying didn't hold water. But she couldn't, Nigerian teacher, she couldn't go and reverse herself. And I mean, I went and gave it to my literature teacher and I said, oh, can you mark this for me? I'm just, over 50. And the woman gave me, I think, a 42 or 43 or something. After warning me that I hope you're not giving me another teacher's assignment to mark for you type thing. But it's just to say, books allow you to travel, allows you to gain ideas that you would not normally gain in the course of your day. And with my staff, I told you the story about how I went to the bookstore. I actually went to the bookstore to buy this book, In Pursuit, by a friend of mine, Chukwuka Chukwuma. And I ended up leaving the bookstore, Roving Heights, with about 13 books, including 3 books each for my staff, because I always encourage them to read. I don't want people around me that don't read, because you always have to improve your writing, improve your reading skills, and ensure that even if you're a lawyer, you know beyond the law. If you're a business person, you know beyond business. Sorry, let me leave it at that.
Thank you so much, Dozie. Yes, I really wanted you to make a contribution because I know you also buy books for the children of people that you work with. And I remember you shared an interesting story about this young girl. Do you want to talk about that, please?
Yes, so I have one of my staff member has, I always ask that question. What are you reading? What are they reading? I'm also, lately I've been a big fan of keep the tablet away from the kids for a little bit longer and let them have proper books. So the first couple of my kids are grown now. My youngest is about, 11, going on 12 now. So they have a lot of books. We've been buying books since they've been 6 months. So I have a lot of old books. So I gave it to my staff member and I said, oh, your kids, I'm sure they will appreciate this. Give this to them. She says, oh, should she return them? I said, no, don't return them. If you find out, let them read them. You can give them to other kids. I don't think it quite took a week. She came back to me. I think I asked, oh, how is Oma doing with the books? She has finished reading all of them, and this was about 6 or 7 books. So I was shocked, but I was excited. So the day I went to Roving Heights, I took her along. I said, okay, let's go. We started picking. I picked this, pick this, pick this. And I said, the only difference you do for me this time around is tell Oma, after she reads every book, and I spoke to the child as well. After she reads every book, sort of what Patrick's mom did with them, write a paragraph. And I think I sent you screenshots of the short snippets that the kid wrote. So it's, because I think it's a skill they will carry on for the rest of their lives. None of my kids ever say I'm bored, because you either have like I read on my tablet and I read physical books. I can't be bored. On Nigerian flights where they don't allow you to use your tab, for example, I have a physical book I carry. I'm reading. So, and Patrick made the good point about the connection with others. You get into an interview situation. I don't have a ready example, but the fact that you've read one book in common, all of a sudden you're talking about the book, and the main agenda for that meeting has been set aside. And in fact, the fact that you read has moved you to the next level, for lack of a better word. Yeah. So for me, that little kid is exciting. And since then, we've done a lot more books and whatnot. And I keep getting, once in a while, even I have forgotten, but the kid has kept faith with sending me summaries of the books. And Patrick made a good point about it can be anything. So one of the kids reads this book called Diary of a Wimpy Kid. It's a comic book form, but it's a younger kid, which is good. Get them into that. They call them picture books. But once you get past the picture book phase, then you get into the normal prose and whatnot, and it will serve them for life.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dozie. And please do keep up the good work.
Certainly. Thank you.
We are all inspired by your story. We now know what to do. We know what young kids should be doing. And that brings me to Patrick. Patrick, he talked about the hard copy, the book. Does it really make a difference if they do the e-book or if they do the hard copies? Okay, apart from kids, younger and more grown-up people. Does it make any difference if you actually pick up the book to read, or whether you read it on Kindle or you have an audiobook?
Okay, so I agree with Dozie as well. We keep the kids away from electronics, so they read hard copy books. Because I think there's something that happens when the eyes connect with the words, at least at that age. you know. But for me, I've made a complete transition to Kindle, right? So everything I read is on my iPad. I've got Kindle for iPad, so I download books constantly. In fact, again, to talk about my poor friend Nana, who I've been trying to get to move to Kindle, but he's refused. I guess after I shocked him today, he might move to Kindle. And his issues are he likes the feel, of the book. He likes to mark, highlight the books. He likes to, bookmark and so on. And I told him you can do exactly all of them, on Kindle. And in fact, what he has over the hard copies, all the notes I make when I'm reading, if I want to reference them, I just do a quick search. I just have to remember one word I used. I do a search and it puts. If you, Nana, want to find it, you have to remember the book you made the notes in. You have to remember the page where you made the notes, etc. So there are many advantages. In fact, indeed, the world has moved on, so you better move, right? But there were some things Dozie touched on that I just wanted to touch a little bit. When after working for Accenture, I worked for, I went to get my MBA to business school, and then I got a job with Citigroup in the management associate program. Now that's a very competitive program to get into, and the last interview was in Connecticut, and they brought everybody to probably about 20 or so of us, and they had slots for maybe 10 people from that batch, right? And these are folks who have gone through, all the stages. So everyone there is pretty smart. Now you're looking at how do I differentiate myself? So we got in there, about 4 interviews plus a presentation and everything. And then the last interview was with this managing director, in the bank. And I'm thinking, how do I, on God's green earth, differentiate myself to get this job? So I got into the interview and I needed to take the guy to my comfort zone. And I thought of what to do. And in the course of the interview, I took the question to that I'm greatly, that I'm in my little stay in America, I'm quite surprised and disappointed that, one of the greatest American authors does not get the recognition that he needs. And the guy is like, who? I said, Ernest Hemingway. And he packed all the technical interview questions he prepared, and we started talking about Hemingway. And I believe to this date that it was that discussion of Hemingway that got me the job, right? So that's what reading does for you. And interestingly, we talked about different Hemingway books, and so it wasn't a fluke. It wasn't like I was making it up, yeah? And we had, heated debates about blah, 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 right? Now, you can't overemphasize it. It's like you meet someone and you have a point of connect. It's that point of connect that differentiates you, gives you a little bit of an edge over the people you're competing with, etc. I don't know how else to emphasize that this is really, really important to do. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you, Patrick. I've also been monitoring the comments. I have a couple of questions for you from the audience. There's one from Pius Okigbo Jr. He says, good afternoon. Which books would you recommend as a must read to our political leaders and economy managers?
I can't call him Pius like he just did. Okay. The problem is, I don't know where to start to answer that question. There are lots and lots and lots of great books that any leader should read, right? Of late, I've been spending a lot of time with Darren Acemoglu and James Robinson. Most of the stuff I've written in recent times, been based on books they've written. Why Nations Fail is a must-read for any leader in Africa. The Narrow Corridor, which they released last year, November 2019, is a must-read. There's some wrote Why Africa Fails. I just posted something on it yesterday. I think it's a must-read for anyone who's interested. But there are lots of authors. Paul Collier has written a lot. about Nigeria in particular. Peter Lewis has written a lot about Nigeria, and so on and so forth. Neil Ferguson, and they've got books and books and books. So I think it's first of all for the leader to be interested in reading, and there's a universe of what they can read. Justin Lin, has some pretty fascinating books, and I see that he might be coming in for some event in Nigeria. He's been here before. I know he's met with the president. He's someone that they should be paying attention to. Abhijit Banerjee, who and his wife Esther Duflo, who both of them won the Nobel Prize in economics last year. They're fascinating reads. So there's a universe of books. It depends on the leader if they're interested. And by leader, I don't mean just the president. I mean both the governors, the ministers, CEOs of agency, and so on.
Absolutely. Okay, thank you so much. And then there's another question from KK. She's asking if you can share the top 3 sections to ease people into the reading culture. People who are not used to reading volumes, reading a lot. Do you have, if you don't know the books, do you have any suggestions on how they can start? Maybe we can do that. If we can't be specific about books.
That's a difficult one for me, so I'll pass it on to Dozie to answer. I'm not sure I have a good answer for that one, Dozie.
Repeat that question again.
Okay, so it's more like someone struggling to get into this culture of reading. Do you have any books in mind that the person can start with? And if we don't have the books any books in mind, what can the person start doing now? How can the person start if you're struggling to pick up that book and open it?
So this is where maybe fiction plays a role, because if you're a development person like I am, you're going from biographies, because I like to read stories about what, Patrick alluded to this, what other people have done, what their experiences have been. Even if, I'll give an example. So El Rufai is the accidental public servant, for example, is a good one about working in the Nigerian federal system, for lack of a better word. Whether you dispute some of his accounts of events is a different thing. I always say, everybody go write your book. We'll read it and decide. But then for somebody who is out there who says, okay, what do I read? I would also recommend, they might not want something real life. They might want something fiction. So one book I always consistently recommend is this book by Adobe Trisha Mubani, I Do Not Come to You by Chance, that deals with the Yahoo problem, but it's a fictionalized version of events. So actually it just reminds me of a story. A family friend was passing through my house from Lagos. They were living on one of these evacuation flights. And of course, two of the kids are with her. And I say, oh, what book are you reading? And I said, oh, mommy bought me 2 books. I'm reading. I just finished reading I Do Not Come to You by Chance. I was like, oh, wow. Okay, tell me, what do you like about the book? And if you met the author, or if you had to talk to the author, what would you ask? She's like, okay, I want to know, how did she know so much about 419 issues? I said, well, hold on. So I called Adobe on the line, put her on the phone. The kid was extremely excited. And both of them talked about the book. She got to ask her questions and whatnot. But that's one book I would recommend, partly because it's a book I've read twice and will read again. It's an interesting story about the issue around 419 in Nigeria. There are so many other books. I mean, not to pump, of course, this book is an interesting one. I just read it, In Pursuit. It talks about, especially for those who have lived abroad, moved back to start a business in Nigeria. I remember back in the days, now there's so much information. But I think it's also an interesting book as to coming back and navigating the Nigerian scene in terms of setting up a business. Yeah. And I'm sure, I don't know if Patrick has read this book, but you will identify some nuggets of information in there. You think you will just come in, set up a business, and you get incorporated the same day. It doesn't quite work that way. Or the permit or the license you need from a particular ministry doesn't quite go as smoothly as you think it would. So they go through that storyline. It's quite interesting. So that's on the non-fiction side.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Dozie. I think we just have 4 more minutes to go. Quickly, Patrick, you have like 30 seconds to respond to this question. How do you think, it's from Yesufu Alonge, how do you think that we as a nation can go back to the culture of having book clubs in our schools?
Obviously, I think everything starts from the home. So I don't believe in outsourcing your responsibility as a parent. Your responsibility as a parent is to get the kids to get excited about life, about opportunities out there. So you have to make reading interesting for them at home. And when they get to school, they'll demand it. Yeah. For the government schools, you can insist, you can put it as a policy, but I find that, maybe it'll work, maybe not. The private schools, some of them do have reading clubs. I also find that some of the kids get together and choose what they want to read, etc. So my son in his secondary school, he's the head of their IT club, and they pick articles they want to read, and when they get into the club, they discuss it and so on and so forth. So once you've excited them at home, even if the school doesn't have it, they'll create it for themselves. But again, as part of the whole reform package, maybe it's interesting I would support a policy that says that every school should have, some kind of club or something like that.
Okay. There's one more question. I'm hoping that we can say something in 20 seconds so we can end. So the question is, would you agree that lack of quality readership may have also affected the African crop of leadership?
Of course. Of course. I mean, the folks we have that we call, increasingly I've stopped calling them leaders and I call them rulers. The folks we have, they've not educated their minds. And that's why we're stuck in this tribalism, ethnicity, rubbish, and religion, and so on and so forth. When the mind is exposed, then you'll realize that all these dividing lines that we have, should not even be there in the first place. That's one. Yeah. Number two, when you've exposed the mind, you now know how to engage the problems that you're supposed to solve as a ruler, as a leader. Yeah. But if you have not read, you will repeat the same mistakes, that somebody said, I forget the quote now, but if we don't change the level of thinking, that we were at when we created the problems, we'll repeat the same problems again. And it's Albert Einstein. I've mangled up the quote. But so the folks come at problems, the national economic problems we have, et cetera, with everyday common sense, like beer parlor reasoning. Yeah. And that's why everything we try, we get back into the bigger problem. But if you realize that if you've read, it opens up your mind. For instance, let me drop this with you. I used to think that a solution to education could be free education, right? And just a way to build quality around it and so on. Until I read a book, the title is A Beautiful Tree. Yeah, written by some guy, I can't remember his name now. But it debunked everything I thought I knew about how to fix education. And it used Nigeria as a case study as well. So if I were in a position to deal with education reform, some of the ideas I had before could have put Nigeria in a bigger problem. But reading has now caused me to go back and rethink what I thought I knew.
Okay. Thank you so much, Patrick. I think we've completely run out of time. I'd like to thank you, our lead discussant, Patrick, for such an engaging and insightful session today. I know I would have loved us to continue to talk more because a lot of people are making comments and asking those questions. Hopefully we'll get to run another session and make sure we cover all the ground if the demand is high. Thank you so much. I know your schedule is very tight. I'm very, very happy that you found time to do this for us. Dozie, our contributor, you are such an inspiration when it comes to reading. You're also very intimidating when you talk about books. But hopefully we have all received the anointing today. We are going to go back and do what? Pick up that book today, pick up many other books, get books and give books out, and become ambassadors of a sustainable reading culture. And to our fantastic audience, thank you so much for your patience, for all the beautiful comments. They are noted. There's Bethel, Uche, all the people that have sent us comments. We want to become better at this. This is going to be a regular gig. So hopefully we will have another one in the next, in the coming month. If you know ways that we can improve on this, or subject matters that you think are relevant that we need to treat in this kind of discourse, please do well to send me an email to info@adlaroseconsulting.com. And thanks to all our sponsors, Next Year Advisory, OK Health, this Think Construct UK, and all the people who have been supporting us. Yusuf, the IT guy who's behind the scenes, making sure that everything is set up and set up well. Thank you, and please do remember to stay safe. COVID is still very real. Let us take care of ourselves and take care of each other. So that at the end of the day, we continue to become responsible citizens of Nigeria and of the world as well. So do take care and God bless you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you for
Thank
having me.
you.
Thank you.